Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. This is CBC Windsor News. Thanks for joining us. Tonight, stepping into the Nextstar EV battery plant, our exclusive story coming up. Plus, federal dollars flowing into Windsor to make a local company greener. And going to the theater in Windsor just became more accessible with the production using sign language to reach more people. We begin tonight with the Nextstar Energy EV battery plant. Reporter Dale Molnar sat down for an interview with the company's chief operating officer. They talked production deadlines, the impact of President-elect Trump, and tariffs. Dale also got exclusive access to the site. Here's his report.
Work has begun in the Nextstar plant, packing modules with battery cells brought in from Poland. And Chief Operating Officer Joe Araujo says construction on the cell plant is on track.
From a construction perspective, we've pretty much done the actual building. It'll be totally completed by mid-year next year.
Right now, they've got 570 people hired here, and they expect to have 600 by the end of the year, and they expect to start building the cells next July.
There's a launch curve, and I can't get into those details, but as we're launching, we man up the process to support that launch.
Chamber of Commerce interim president Tony Haddad is happy to hear it.
I think that's exciting news that they're nearing the targets that they had set for hires this year. It's a tribute, also a recognition of the local market and the skills and trades that are available to meet their expectations in their hiring processes.
When it comes to a Trump presidency starting in the new year, Araujo says they are not worried.
From a Nextstar Energy perspective, it's full speed ahead. Our two parent companies, Stellantis and LG Energy Solutions, have had relationships with both the governments of the United States and here in Canada, and they'll continue to collaborate with the leaders of those two countries.
Is there any concern that it could affect jobs here?
There's no concern from our end. We're full speed ahead.
Joel McCabe, the president and CEO of Auto Forecast Solutions, agrees Donald Trump is more likely targeting Mexico rather than Canada.
I think what's going to happen is he's going to play the card of, well, Mexico, if you decide that you want to help close that border, then we will not penalize you with any kind of tariffs, either now or in 26. He can use some overriding things on USMCA that are regarding for national security that can override it if it's believed to be a concern.
Araujo says the modules they are producing are made to go into any product Stellantis produces in North America, but he can't divulge where they are going. Stellantis won't say either. An auto analyst CBC spoke with says that might be because the modules are going into vehicles Stellantis is still developing and are not ready to announce yet. Tony Haddad would like to see more charging stations to promote the sales of EVs to help the battery plant. Nextstar expects to have 2,000 workers hired by the end of next year and 500 more in early 2026. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
A Windsor-based fuel distribution company is receiving millions of federal dollars to be more environmentally friendly. The Port of Windsor says it will help make Canada's greenest transportation industry even greener. Dawson Chen has more.
Hundreds of vessels pass through the Port of Windsor every year, and many of them depend on sterling fuels for refueling. Now the Windsor-based company is receiving nearly $5 million from the federal government to help update its infrastructure for lower carbon fuel distribution. That's welcome news for the Port of Windsor.
The shipping is the green industry. I mean, I remind you that to move 1 ton of cargo 1 kilometer is only 1 gram of carbon. That's 1/3 of rail, 1/9 of trucking. And with the new biodiesel, reduce that by another 70%. This is huge. It's a huge advancement in the decarbonization of our economy, of transportation, and getting the right product at the right place to the right people.
Our Windsor facility is strategically positioned at the prime location for fueling Great Lakes vessels traveling north to get their cargoes.
The funding is part of a $25 million investment by Transport Canada into what the feds are calling their Green Shipping Corridor program. Sterling Fuel's infrastructure update is one of 4 projects in Ontario sharing in the investment. Canada's Minister of Transport visited Windsor to make the announcement, saying that decarbonizing the marine sector is an important part of the Liberal government's climate action plan.
It recognizes our government's commitment to growing the economy and doing so in an environmentally sustainable way. We actually admit that climate change is a reality.
Anand said the new funding will start flowing by this winter. Dawson Chen, CBC News, Windsor.
While the federal minister of transport was here, she was asked about hazardous materials being transported across the Ambassador Bridge. That's after new rules were greenlit by the state of Michigan, allowing new materials to cross. It sparked local outcry. The minister says this is not a federal issue, but says she's still doing what she can, promising a phone call today with the governor of Michigan.
I will be stressing the concerns that the residents of Windsor have made and MP Kazmierczak has made to me and the federal government, because we will play whatever part we can.
But she stresses regulation of what gets transported on our roads falls on the province of Ontario and the state of Michigan. She's pushing for the province to step up on the issue. The province has denied that this is their responsibility. The new materials now allowed include flammable liquids and corrosive materials, and they've been allowed to cross the bridge as of 2 weeks ago. Chris Potter joins us now for a quick look at weather. Chris, the sun came out to play as you promised.
Yeah, sunshine and seasonable highs today. It was a gorgeous day, and Kat, I hope you had a chance to get out and enjoy. Tomorrow will be similar in terms of temperatures. The winds will become a little bit gustier, and there will be a little bit more cloud moving in, but it's still a fair weather day. You can still get out and enjoy dry weather. Temperatures today peaked at around 9. Now it's 6 in Windsor, Chatham, 5 in London, 4 through Kitchener and Goderich. And once again, not much to point out active weather-wise because of a large area of high pressure, and that's essentially controlling the weather across the entire province. Unfortunately, high pressure does begin to clear off towards the east tonight and tomorrow, leaving us with some rainfall potential for Thursday. But not tonight, not tomorrow. Temperatures around 3, feeling a bit cooler with those easterly winds. 6 for tomorrow morning, and lots of sunshine with some scattered high-level cloud for the afternoon with a high near 10. We'll talk more about that rain coming in Thursday coming up.
For sure. We'll check back in with you. Thanks, Chris.
You got it.
Yesterday, we aired a story about an additional tax on vacant homes in the city, and we have a correction on that story now. It included a quote from Janice Guthrie with the City of Windsor, saying that there were 70 people who declared their home vacant. The city has since told CBC News that the number given was inaccurate, and that there were 7 people who declared their home vacant, not 70. Let's turn now to a first for one Windsor theater company. The Windsor Light Music Theater will offer a show with sign language interpretation, making it accessible to those who are deaf or hard of hearing. Here's a sneak peek.
My name is Matthew DeMichelle, and I'm the director here for A Christmas Story at Windsor Light Music Theater. Well, really excitingly, we have ASL interpretation for this production. We have partnered with an incredible organization called Stagehands, and they will be the ones that produce the ASL interpretation.
So Beth and I established our company called Stagehands, where we provide theater interpretation for theaters throughout Windsor and Essex County. It was an opportunity for us to merge our love for that theater and our love for a language.
We're having to listen and attend to the characters and what they're saying and interpret as best as we can message equivalency as to what they're saying and to match it, as well as their affect, as well as their personality. So that can be a little challenging sometimes depending on the character.
You're interpreting every character that is in the play, so it takes a long time to get it down, and because it is a musical as well, that adds an extra dimension to it.
Just like any other community, not every deaf person loves going to the theater, but there are people that would love to go to the theater, and to be able to have it accessible as to what's happening and what's going on the stage, I think that is something that we wish to provide. And we kind of feed off of one another, I would say, right? Pretty good team that way.
Yeah. We really lucked out.
Yeah.
We work so well together.
The performance with ASL interpretation will be on November 22nd. Let's turn now to some staggering numbers reviewed by our colleagues at CBC Toronto that paint a very troubling situation with Ontario's justice system. We've learned that more than half of the criminal charges laid by police in this province end up being tossed by our courts before being tested at trial. That has police, prosecutors, and victims demanding the province fix what appears to be a broken justice system. Sarah McMillan reports.
It's been almost 3 years since Emily Quint reported to police that she'd been sexually assaulted. Just over a year ago, the charges against her alleged assailant were tossed out, not because of the merits of the case, but because of court delays.
The stages of grief just flew through my body, flew through my mind. There was so much anger, so much sadness. It was like, who can I contact? What can I do? This can't be the end. What are you talking about? Disbelief.
The case had exceeded a strict 18-month limit to complete the trial. The charges were stayed because the charter rights of the accused had been violated. And her case is far from an anomaly. Data from Statistics Canada reveals a dramatic shift in criminal outcomes in Ontario over the last decade. The data looks at decisions made within the court system each year. In 2022-23, more than half of those decisions resulted in charges being thrown out without being tested at trial. That includes charges that are withdrawn, stayed, dismissed, or discharged before a decision at trial. That's up 14 percentage points from a decade ago. The trend includes even the most serious charges like homicides and sexual assaults. Sarah Crawford is with the Canadian Resource Centre for Victims of Crime.
It's problematic. It's an ongoing failure that we're seeing in the courts, and a lot of our victims and survivors are losing faith in the process.
Criminal charges can be dropped for a number of reasons, including when there isn't a reasonable prospect of conviction. Sometimes charges are also withdrawn when a person faces multiple charges and agrees to plead guilty to a lesser charge. But those working within the justice system tell us there are cases that should go to trial but aren't because of staffing issues and court delays. According to the province, last year 178 criminal cases were stayed because the case stretched beyond the time limit. The president of the Ontario Crown Attorneys Association says judicial vacancies, courtroom shortages, and more complex cases with lots of digital evidence are all contributing factors.
It's leaving my frontline crowns in a really difficult position. They are working tremendously hard. They care about these cases. They care about their complainants, and they care about protecting the public.
The Ministry of the Attorney General says it's investing millions of dollars to hire at least 25 new judges, as well as more Crown prosecutors. Kelway says that's a start, but not enough. Paul Pedersen is with the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police. He says the current challenges facing the court system are disappointing and frustrating.
Public trust is lost when the system falls apart, and we want to do our part to work with others and make sure that justice can be served.
That trust certainly lost for Quint, who testified and was cross-examined before the trial was cut short. She says disclosing to police in the first place was difficult.
I think that pain that I had at that moment is nowhere near the amount of pain that I had throughout the 2-year process, where they finally said, Emily, it's over. It's why would you put me through all of that?
In written remarks after the charges against Quint's alleged assailant were stayed, the judge wrote that the issues at the Toronto courthouse that caused the delays were shameful and brought the administration of justice into disrepute. Sarah McMillan, CBC News, Toronto.
A man has now been charged in the deaths of 2 women hit by a car after they stopped to assist a turtle crossing the road last spring. The women were sisters in their 60s. The pair were killed when they were struck by a car on May 18th on Charing Cross Road in Chatham-Kent. Police now say that a 24-year-old man from Raleigh Township, that's about an hour drive from Windsor, has been charged with 2 counts of careless driving causing death. As take a live look outside there at our beautiful city. Hope you got to enjoy the sunshine out there while we still can before more of that November gloom sets in. Now, when we come back, we'll have news for you out of England as well as the United States as Donald Trump gears up to get back to the White House. We're learning more about who he's surrounding around himself as he gets ready to take back that office. And of course, later on, we'll have Chris Potter with us for weather. So stay with us. Welcome back. With Donald Trump getting ready to return to the White House, we now know more about some of the key members of his team. But we begin with the resignation of the head of Church of England.
I'm Chris Brown in London, where the Archbishop of Canterbury, the leader of the world's Anglicans, has been forced to resign. Justin Welby crowned a new king, and as Archbishop of Canterbury, he presided over the immense influence of the Church of England in British life as well as Anglicans in Canada.
I'm John Smythe.
But it was his failure to repeatedly stop this man that forced his resignation. Smythe was a Canadian-born British lawyer and a morality crusader who ran church camps in the UK and Africa. Over 5 decades, he committed heinous physical and sexual abuse against more than 120 boys.
Basically caned me so many times that I thought I was going to die.
Smythe developed
A Channel 4 documentary in 2017 revealed the extent and severity of Smythe's reign of terror and suggested a decades-long cover-up by church officials. An independent report released last week concluded it was at least partly Welby's fault Smythe was not stopped. That when he became Archbishop in 2013, there was enough evidence to take to police, but he did not.
I did not ensure that this was pursued as energetically, as remorselessly as it should have been.
Welby attempted damage control with an apology, but the pressure to quit grew.
I think that it's very hard for the church, as the nationally established church, to continue to have a moral voice in any way, shape or form in our nation when we cannot get our own house in order.
In 2022, Welby was in Canada to deliver an earlier apology for what he called the terrible crime of church-run residential schools.
Forgive me.
But this church critic says apologies without change are meaningless.
It's been sheer hypocrisy over the last few years, and I hope now somebody will sit back and look at this and say that we need to start afresh with how we deal with protecting the vulnerable in our church.
John Smythe died in 2018 without ever being brought to justice. In a statement on his resignation, Justin Welby said he felt shame at failing to safeguard the vulnerable. Chris Brown, CBC News, London.
I'm Katie Simpson in Washington, D.C., covering the transfer of power from the Biden administration to the new Trump administration. Donald Trump is working to ensure his team is ready to go the day he returns to the White House, selecting Marco Rubio, the senator from Florida, to be his Secretary of State. Trump and Rubio were rivals back in 2016 as they fought over the Republican presidential nomination.
Little Marco Rubio, he's a total disaster.
They've since made up, and Rubio has extensive experience on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and is considered a hawk on China and Iran. The former governor of Arkansas, Mike Huckabee, will be the U.S. ambassador to Israel, a pivotal role as Trump reaffirms U.S. support for its ally. South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem will head up the Department of Homeland Security. She's a rising star within the Republican Party, but faced criticism for admitting to killing her 14-month-old dog because the dog wasn't good at hunting. And Florida Congressman Mike Waltz will be Trump's new national security advisor. He's a staunch Trump loyalist who has criticized Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in the past, promoting Pierre Poilievre on social media, writing, "This guy is going to send Trudeau packing in 2025 finally and start digging Canada out of the progressive mess it's in." Some Canadian leaders are working to make sure they too are ready for the new Trump administration. Ontario Premier Doug Ford suggesting Canada get in Trump's good graces by cutting Mexico out of the updated North American Free Trade Agreement, punishing Mexico for skirting the rules of the agreement by accepting cheap Chinese-made imports.
We do a bilateral trade deal with the U.S., and if Mexico wants a bilateral trade deal with Canada, God bless them. But I'm not going to be drawn down with these cheap imports taking men and women's jobs from hardworking Ontarians.
Prime Minister Trudeau isn't shutting the idea down completely, noting that most allies have a problem with China's trade practices. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
After the break, Chris Potter will be back with us for a look at the weather. Stay with us. Chris Potter is back with us to talk about the weather. Chris, I've realized I've been talking a lot about November as really gloomy, and I got to stop doing that. I got to be optimistic about the weather.
Optimistic. Today was one of those days, which probably did hopefully give you some optimism as we continue to step forward. And I got to tell you, Kat, temperatures themselves over the next 5, 7, maybe even 10 days, they're not going to be warming dramatically, but they're not going to be falling dramatically either. They're going to remain fairly stable, and it generally does look like we're going to hold on to slightly above normal temperatures, both in terms of daytime highs and overnight lows. Today was seasonable. We peaked at 8.9. Normal is 9.1. I would call that near normal or seasonable. Temperatures now starting to fall a little bit. -3 right now in Muskoka, 4 in Windsor, 4 in Toronto, 2 right now in Ottawa. Closer to home, we'll bring you back into southwestern Ontario. Temperatures vary anywhere from 2 to 5, and we do have an easterly wind which will develop off of Lake Erie, and obviously the lake waters are warmer than the air this time of year, so when we have that component to the air, it kind of protects lake shores from cooling off dramatically, and that's what's going to keep southwestern Ontario a little bit less cold than areas further inland. So in terms of that active weather and what we're going to expect, I mean, not much to point out through tonight. In fact, nothing. A few clouds will trickle in for the early morning, mostly high-level cloud, that wispy cloud. Still going to be a bright, beautiful, fair weather day. It's still going to be dry through the day. But as we get further into the afternoon and evening, that cloud cover will begin to increase and thicken. And as we get through the overnight, just before daybreak on Thursday, we do have a little surge of moisture moving in. And the end result will be some rainfall moving into Windsor and Chatham. It will eventually lift towards the northeast, moving in towards London, continuing to migrate further towards the east. But as that happens, it will break apart, losing a lot of organization. So it's not going to be a complete washout day on Thursday. But trust me, have your umbrella handy, especially during the morning and early afternoon. In terms of what to expect for tonight, overnight lows will be around 0, maybe -1 in London, still holding on to 3, 4, maybe even 5 degrees closer to Lake Erie. Easterly winds will be in play. As we step forward into the day tomorrow, more of a southeasterly wind will start to kick in. Southerly winds do indeed tend to warm us up, but once again, in this case, not so much. But at least we're climbing a degree or two compared to today's highs, anywhere from 9 to 11 for tomorrow. On average, mostly sunny, but like I said, the further you get into the afternoon, it will get a little grayer. The showers, periods of rain for Thursday, once again, first half primarily. Friday, cloud cover with highs near 11. And at this point, it looks fairly cloudy for Saturday and Sunday, but daytime highs will be around 12. And at this point, we're calling for dry weather.
You know, dry weather means you can still get outside, still enjoy
100%.
your weekend. That's
100%.
Wonderful. Thanks for that, Chris.
Thank you.
And thanks to you all for watching. That is it for CBC Windsor News. For more, go to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor, and you can also download the CBC News app. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.
Phew.